Hello. Thank you so much for allowing me to share my journey of homelessness with you. Homelessness for women is very different. To a great extent, homeless women are invisible. In a lot of cases, women are coming to homelessness from a position of vulnerability and powerlessness over which they have no control. I, for instance, have never spent a single night without a roof over my head. But through the course of the time I spent, especially at the YWCA, I learned how different homelessness is for women and how it's defined differently based on each individual woman. You might be surprised to learn that of the over 80 women I encountered when I was at the YWCA Married Over House, only one was dealing with issues of drug and alcohol. The rest of the women had such different stories, so diverse, none of them the same, all coming from different backgrounds and different challenges. On Saturday, May 22nd, 2010, about 8 p.m., I went to the Married Over House to take my bed there. I was greeted by Omalara, who had interviewed me earlier in the day. She gave me a tour of Married Over House, and we finished up on the restricted access 4th floor, and she showed me to the dorm. The dorm is about a 12 by 20 room with 3 sets of bunk beds end to end down one wall and 6 small dressers end to end down the other with a lock and key on each dresser. The protocol at the time was that new residents of the YWCA Married Over House spent 3 weeks in the dorm. That has since changed, and I'm very glad to say myself and one of the other women at the time changed that. There's a curfew at the dorm, so at 10:30 every evening, 2 women staffers from the Y came in, did a head count, and made sure everybody was there, turned the lights out, and shut the door. The time I was there, or during that week, I was introduced to a social worker whose job it was to put my life back on track, work with me to put a plan in place, find employment options. And the first time I went to meet her, she had a stack of forms this high on her desk. We went through them, delved into every portion of my life. She was 12. She couldn't possibly relate to my circumstances. I got more support, more information, more help from the residents of the Married Over House. 2 of the ladies in the dorm, Carol, a 52-year-old woman from New Brunswick, she had, her 20-year marriage had failed. She had left the restaurant that she had run with her husband for more than 20 years, jumped on a plane and come to Calgary to make things better for her. She was a university graduate in women's studies, an ardent feminist. And Carol and I, at least once a week, we found a different wine bar to go to, enjoy a glass of wine, and discuss all the women's issues of the world. Maggie, a 32-year-old Native woman, had a picture of her 4-year-old daughter pinned to the underside of the bunk so that she could lie down there every night and look at her daughter who had been apprehended and use her daughter as inspiration to conquer her alcohol and drug issues so she could bring her baby home. It wasn't until I was at the Married Over House about 3 months, and I was asked to come and meet with Gail and Val, 2 women from the YWCA Married Over House housing team. What struck me when I went to talk to Gail and Val was I walked into the room and they were sitting around a small coffee table. They had no papers, no notebooks, no computers, no forms. It was just them and their coffee cups. They were about my age. They offered me a cup of coffee. And Gail said, "How are you, Colette? What brings you to Married Over House?" Sorry. So then my story just spewed out, much like this. So between 2006 2009, I had gone through what became a very acrimonious divorce. I became estranged from my daughter. She's now 21. I still don't have a relationship with her. I bought a house, lost it in foreclosure. I had built my dream of owning my own business, but the problem was I built my dream in my house. So when I lost the house, I lost my business. After I moved out of the house, I sold, gifted, trashed, anything I could. At 49 years old, went back to live with my parents. I went away to the Vancouver Whistler Games and worked there for 3 months, came back to Calgary with the plan of working with a girlfriend to revamp her business and rent one of her properties. That arrangement did not go as planned. I was surprised when one morning where I was living, 2 of my sisters showed up. And they said my girlfriend had called them and said if they don't get me out of her house, her next call will be to the police to have me evicted. I went with my sisters to one of their homes, and over the course of the day, my siblings, I have 5 of them, arrived. It soon became very clear I was to be the subject of an intervention. The conversation went something like this: Colette, you're homeless. You're squatting. You have no job. You have no income. You have screwed up your life for the last few years and it's time to fix it. You can stay here on condition that you sign up with a temporary agency and get a job. And you must also commit to getting a full mental assessment. One of my sisters-in-law had been designated to take me to that mental assessment. The next morning, May 11th, 2010, she took me to Calgary Health Services Sundance, and I met with a psychologist. I invited my sister-in-law to sit in on the conversation because I had nothing to hide. And really, she had to report back to the posse, so I wanted to make it easy for her. I talked to the psychologist for about 45 minutes, and she excused herself from the room, came back about 15 minutes later. She moved her chair over right in front of me, sat right in front of me, put her hands on my knees, looked directly in my eyes. She said, Colette, I've been working with our emergency housing team to find you a bed. You cannot go back to your sister's. It is not safe for you there. That day, right away, I did go back, picked up my 2 suitcases from my sister's house, and I have not seen or spoken to any of my siblings since that day. At the Y, I started to try and build a life of normalcy. I'm a foodie, so I'm dying to hear Nicole's presentation. So I spent my time cooking supper in the community kitchen. I was allowed to babysit some of the younger women's kids. I took some of the kids to the park to feed the ducks, and I got to know the women. Jaylene, for example, came into the dorm one night like a whirlwind. Jaylene is a tall, skinny, chain-smoking motor mouth. She never stops. And she had gotten permission to come into the dorm late because she was attending her daughter's grade 12 graduation ceremony and dinner. Jaylene had been released from the hospital the day before after being treated for serious injuries caused by an assault by her partner, including puncturing her left breast implant with a hammer. A few weeks later, Jaylene introduced me to her, or she came to me talking about Aziz. Aziz was worried that her gray hair was starting to show. Could we please color it? Aziz is a 45-year-old woman from Pakistan. She had come here to Calgary with her husband and 2 teenage sons. Shortly after coming here, her husband threw her out. She did not speak English. Her husband threw her out and denied her access to her kids. The first time I met Aziz, I simply said hello. And with that, she took a photograph out from under her sari, and her arms started going, and she started talking and crying, and you could get the gist of it. We were all really good at sign language after after that. And it finally ended with her just sobbing, and all I could do was hold her in my arms and hug her. But the three of us did actually go to the drugstore, and we had a lot of fun pretending not to understand sign language, so I bought a box of Platinum Blonde. I did put a jet black box in it, and we had the best of times coloring her hair that evening. So to cut off a long story, that I was 50 years old when I went into the Y and at my lowest ebb, but I got the best gift in the world. I got a mulligan. So now I truck all over North America with my darling husband in an 85 square foot semi-cab. I'm almost officially a Billy Big Rigger, not quite. My life is full of peace and joy and love. I only let people in my life who want the absolute best for me. But the greatest gift of all is I have home anywhere I go, because home is in my heart. I would like to share with you some of the other stories from the women in the YWCA. Thank you.